Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Leah, and I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. We're talking about mindfulness, which is one of my favorite classes to teach and one of my favorite topics to talk about because I think it's been transformative in my life and hopefully is transformative in your life as well. But I was just wondering if I could get somebody to actually just type in their chat box if they could just let me know if you can hear and see me. And then I'll go ahead and start to show, to get the slides. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, Kat, for doing that. Okay. So let me just go into share screen here. Okay. And we're going to, okay. Got it. Okay. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to type them into that chat box. If there's a comment or anything that you want to add, and if I can, I will stop during the class and try to check those. If not, though, we'll make sure that we spend some time at the end so I can get any questions or comments that people have. But again, I'm excited to have you here tonight. If we do have guests, I believe there's some guests registered for the class. My name is Dr. Leah Hahn. I've been in practice for almost 20 years now, but my background is actually in biology and anthropology. I love studying other cultures in terms of their healing practices. And we've practiced network spinal analysis for the last 20 years, which is a very gentle, very specific type of chiropractic practice that actually creates a mindful state. And so we'll talk about that as one strategy, but I want to give you a lot of strategies as we go through this class tonight. So mindfulness, a guide. We'll get started here. So what is mindfulness? So if you think of the practice of mindfulness, mindfulness is being able to really hone in on what's happening at that very moment. If you can really get in touch with what your thoughts are through on, just on a daily basis, even a minute by minute basis, you will notice that you are thinking thoughts that have absolutely nothing to do with what's actually happening within your life. That is a very common phenomenon. So the art of mindfulness or the practice of mindfulness is the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of the experience. So that quote is by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is one of the great teachers of mindfulness practices, but it's actually tuning into what is happening to you at that moment. And so a lot of times what we'll talk about tonight is like emotions and different past experiences and our judgments of what are happening is totally clouding the experience of an actual moment. And so we want to talk about what can you do to bring yourself, what are practices that can bring yourself into that present moment? Because when you start to find that present time consciousness, there's so much peace involved in that process. So we become so occupied with things that have happened to us, the stories that we've told ourselves, different obstacles that are happening within our lives, that we forget to pay attention to what actually is, to what the reality of what is happening right now. What does that actually look like? So technology has been a curse. It's to mindfulness. It's actually been an amazing thing, obviously, for so many reasons. But when you think about the art of being present, to actually noticing what's happening around you, technology has become a pretty big burden. And so it makes the concept of mindfulness even more important, not only to your mental health and to your mental well-being, but also just to your physical well-being as well. And we'll talk about these things in the class tonight. Since the year 2000, there's been so much research on mindfulness that has taken place. So we're definitely experiencing a shift in consciousness. So people are starting to realize that they aren't present, which is a big step forward. If we can create enough space within our lives to realize where our thoughts actually are, that's a huge step forward. But it's taking a bigger role in what's happening in the scientific community as well, and studying what mindfulness does, not only for, again, your mental health, your emotional health, but also your physical health as well. So here we go into the research of mindfulness and happiness. So it's important to get this piece of it because it puts it in perspective of why this is such a big deal. So science has shown us that we think approximately 60,000 thoughts on a daily basis. 95% of those thoughts are the exact same thoughts that you thought yesterday. So we're repeating the same thoughts over and over and over again. It's been shown that approximately 80% of those thoughts are negative. That's not what I want for you. But if you can start to pay attention to your own thinking, you may start to see some of the common patterns that you're thinking about on a daily basis. And it's difficult to create a positive thought and life changes or healing or more peace within your life or improve the quality of your life when you're stuck in that constant cycle of not only probably overthinking, but then thinking the same thoughts over and over again and having most of those be negative. So, in a Harvard study, it was shown that adults spend only 50% of their time in the present moment. So, i.e., what that's saying is that adults are mentally checked out 50% of the time. So, if we go further into that, I really think it's a gift that you can give yourself when you start to become really present to what's happening in your life, but give yourself some attention in that way. So I want to start giving you tools, and these are tools that I started actually learning about in chiropractic school. Scott and I started attending seminars, maybe my second year of chiropractic school, and continued on. And one of the main strategies that was talked about was present time consciousness. So, present time consciousness is actually awakening to where you are in that exact moment, what's happening, what your senses can sense during that time period. And again, right in the present moment. So, we use our five senses to help. What do we see? What do we hear? What do we smell? Can we feel the fresh air? What are you witnessing at that time? But really being honed in onto what you are doing at that moment. I always think that I love coming to the office and I love seeing clients because I am so present when I'm in those moments. So it's really easy for me. People will ask, like, how do you keep track of what you're doing or when you're working with clients? Well, I become very present. And so my mind becomes very focused and I become very intent on what's happening to me and what's happening around me at that time. So there's different ways that you can start to practice this. So you can run errands and be actually present to exactly what you're doing when you're in the car, when you're driving, when you're getting out of the car, when you're in the store, and not check your phone. Be absolutely unaware of technology for a period of time. You can take the time to watch the sunset, to brush your pet, and just think about exactly what you're doing at that time. What do you notice? There's so much research happening about really changing metabolism and improving quality of sleep that has to do with just being present with the sunrise, being present with the sunset, and then how that can reset your whole metabolism and your hormones and how your sleep wake cycle. So anyway, being present in those moments. You can take a walk and be purposeful about smelling the pine trees or noticing the grass or whatever it may be that's happening around you. And then start to find pleasure in simple things. So for me, I'll practice this all the time when I'm washing dishes, cutting vegetables, really simple tasks that instead of allowing my brain to think, well, what's the next thing? What's the next thing I need to do? Or noticing 5 million things around me that aren't complete. I'll instead think of exactly what I'm doing, what the water feels like on my hands, what it feels like to pour the dish soap into the sink, whatever it may be, but I'm becoming very mindful of exactly what's happening at that time. The next thing to do is try a technology fast. Now, you may decide to do this for a few hours. You may decide that to do this for an entire day. Maybe let your loved ones know that, please, I'm not going to be checking my cell phone throughout the day, and have some way in case there's an emergency, but really being mindful about setting a limit for yourself and why you're going to do this, why it's a very intentional act that you're having a technology fast. But research has shown that even if someone hears like the ping of a text going off in someone's cell phone or a cell phone ringing, that it has the power to spike blood pressure. And when you're surrounded by noise, it really affects your memory, your cognitive function. So what they've actually started to research then is if you have just 5 minutes of silence, that it enhances your mental focus and your happiness. If you constantly, and I was this person for a long time, I always like to have the TV on and I wasn't watching it, but I just like the background noise. I found it very comforting. Now I'm at a point in my life and I've been practicing mindfulness for, gosh, over 10 years, having a really specific practice, but I can't stand that background noise. I need the quiet. I need the peace. I need the sounds of nature. So, but just having basically giving yourself the ability to feel what it feels like to be without technology can be really powerful. So one of the things to think about with that is that you don't have to like unplug from social media constantly or sit in a quiet room for hours, but to give yourself some kind of a break throughout the day can be incredibly powerful for your brain as well as your body. So when you think about this, you can take just here's some ideas. You can take regular breaks. 5 minutes at a time can actually absolutely do this and consciously invite more quiet into your life by even taking 10 minutes of the day. People that was actually in silence or they had a quiet 10 minutes, people made healthier decisions, they're less stressed, they're more likely to keep positive habits. And I will tell you, so I specifically will get up in the morning before everybody else in our house gets up. And for me, I can completely notice a difference when I start my day in that way. When there's quiet in the house, I have my thoughts to myself. I have a journaling practice, a meditation practice. Um, I notice a huge difference in terms of when I start my day out like that versus I start my day out with other people making noise or turning on TV or talking to me. I really need that time now. It's become more and more important to me. But it seriously shifts hormonal states. It shifts your brain's ability to connect with what's actually happening within your life. And you do make healthier decisions when you have time like that, dedicated time that's quiet like that each day. So the next thing that you can do, just ideas again, get into your car and turn off the radio for the first 5 minutes and being in your car. Set boundaries when you're okay with checking your phone and when you're not okay with checking your phone. You'll notice how addicted you are to often grabbing your phone, scrolling through things, but that kind of constant noise or constant information coming at you can be really destructive. Turn off the alerts on your phones. Do you need to have a ping every time an email comes to you or every time a text comes to you? Or are there different ways to handle that? Invest in calm and purchase noise canceling headphones, maybe for when you're on a plane or you can't create a quiet space in your home or can't get up early, but you do want to create that quiet zone for yourself. Use noise canceling headphones, and that can be really effective to create the same type of environment and the same response in your physiology. So the other important thing to realize with this is whatever you read or see or do in the last 20 minutes before you go to bed is processed by your subconscious 6 times more than what you see, read, or do for the rest of the day. So become very conscious of what you are exposing yourself to, especially at the end of the day. So I know I grew up in a house where the news would always be on. The 10 o'clock news would always be on at the end of the day. And there's always gruesome things that are shown, pictures and what's being said. And I know there's some positive things that can happen with that too. But for me, I found it just wasn't worth it for my consciousness to have that on at the 10 o'clock time or right before bed. And so it's something to think about and just to become more conscious of what are you exposing yourself to? Is there some kind of positive work that you can read, or can you read affirmations or something that feels like more of a meditative type of quality? I love to read at night, but I typically read more light and positive things at night, and I save my more serious stuff for the beginning of the day. But it's up to you. But it's just something to realize when you're looking at your day and what you're exposing your mind to. Sleep is absolutely critical to the quality of your thoughts, to the quality of your emotions, and your ability to be mindful throughout the day. So just a quick review, many of you probably know this, but on sleep hygiene, you want a quiet and cool and dark space. I would prefer that there are not electronics within that sleeping space. If you do need an alarm clock, I know so many people use their phones or their watches now, but if you have to have an alarm clock, I would prefer one that has red numbers on it because it's a lot less stimulating to the brain and the adrenal glands, where blue and green can be actually stimulatory and actually keep you more awake. I would like you to enter that space for sleep with the lack of technology. So quitting technology as early as possible in your day, but at least 1 hour before sleep. My goal is that your brain and your adrenal glands that are responsible for your cortisol and your adrenaline really start to go into a restful state as you prepare to get ready for bed. Use NSA, use mindfulness to increase peace within the nervous system, lower your inflammatory state. That makes a big difference in terms of your quality of sleep with eating a whole food diet. So we have lots of different classes that talk about nutritional strategies for that. You can use cleansing strategies, detoxification strategies, increase your water consumption throughout the day, not right before bedtime, but really to work on that piece of it, because the quality of your sleep has a lot to do with what you consume throughout the day. And then go to bed when you're sleepy and try to get up at the same time each day, which has a whole concept of energy expenditure. Just meaning that if you let yourself sleep in, maybe you had a tougher night of sleep or you got to bed late and you had it and you let yourself sleep in, you don't have the same level of energy expenditure throughout the day, and it can make your next night of sleep worse. So again, it's just something to look at. We want to make sure that we're kind of creating this rhythm for the body, that it can really get a good restful night's sleep, because it makes a huge difference in terms of how you think, what you think about. I know if I get a poor night's sleep, I'm much more negative. I have a more negative outlook. I'm more irritable. But even my whole kind of perspective shifts if I'm not getting quality sleep. So it's something to really evaluate in terms of the whole picture of how your body's responding to your whole mood and your whole perspective and your whole level of being able to be present within your life. Meditation has been life-changing for me. I started a meditation practice early on when we actually had just first started our office, so probably in the early 2000s, but it wasn't until probably 2012, 2013 that I really started to practice meditation on a regular basis. And I found it to be life-changing, but not right away. I could feel myself go into a meditative state for little glimpses of time. And the longer I practice meditation, the longer I can feel. It's like stretches of time where I can actually feel my brain go into state of silence. And it's an incredible feeling, and it is so incredibly peaceful, and it's a game changer in terms of how my day goes. So I highly recommend it, but please know that it's a process. There's guided meditation. You can quietly sit in silent meditation. You can use affirmation cards, like kind of pick an affirmation that is something that you want to focus on, or maybe some part of your life that you want to improve, and you can focus on that. And it might be simple as like, all is well, all is as it should be. It can be something like that. You can meditate on a passage in a book or a prayer, but find something that you connect to. So the thing to know about meditation is I have clients that tell me all the time, well, I just can't do it because I just keep thinking, or I just can't sit still for that long. Well, let's bring something else into it. And what I mean by bring something else into it, bring a breath practice into it. So I love guided meditation where they are guiding me through, like, take a deep breath and hold it for a count of 5 or whatever it may be, but bring something into it, or you can bring walking into it. So there's all kinds of tracks, and I'm going to mention the app that I use all the time, but there's walking meditations. There's things that you can actively do where you're actually moving your body, but you're in a meditative state. You're still safe, but you're in a meditative state. But know that part of the whole practice of meditation is that you are going to notice that thoughts occur. I can be meditating, sit down to meditate, and even be listening to a guided meditation and realize that for, gosh, 3 minutes of it, I've been thinking about my grocery list and what I have to do that day and everything that needs to get done and where my son needs to be at a certain time or whatever it may be. But the key with that is that I notice that. I notice where my thoughts are headed, and I bring my focus back to the meditation. That act is going to increase your ability to have more and more gaps in terms of your thoughts. But it's the whole practice. There's no perfection with it. But it gets better and better over time, and you'll notice the difference in terms of how you feel and how the quality of your thinking the longer you practice, or the more frequently you practice. And so realize that you're not trying to achieve anything in meditation. You can sit down and simply breathe, but you're increasing the relaxation response. And that's what helps to increase the balance of the autonomic nervous system. So when most patients come to see us, they're in fight or flight. They've got so much fight or flight physiology. And so there's a lot of dysautonomia or dysregulation of the nervous system. And when that happens, it's very common to have like rapid kind of thinking, just almost like erratic, like we're just constantly moving from thought to thought to thought. And there's really not awareness of it because the frontal cortex of the brain is kind of dampened in terms of its function, and we're living out of our old brain cell centers, and we're just kind of moving from thing to thing to thing and within our lives. There's very little ease or relaxation or ability to heal in that state. The more we practice meditation, we're increasing that relaxation response, we're increasing the parasympathetic response, and that's the state in which you can heal and grow. So there's many good reasons that I love it, but I promise that the more you do it, the easier it gets. You will notice the thoughts, but you can let them go. I love that if you can create a space in your home that is dedicated, it's kind of like your relaxation space. I've heard authors call it like your Zen den. But whatever you can do, is it a corner of your house? Is it a specific chair? For me, it's a specific chair that I use. It may have like Legos and all kinds of stuff and schoolwork around it, but it's still my chair, and I go to that space, and that's my meditation space. There's a big window by it. I can see nature. That's really important to me to create that kind of environment. But if you have a space to go to that can create like a space for silence and peace, that's a really great thing for the nervous system. But here's the benefits. When you look at the physiology of it, of how it's affecting your body, it's increasing the ability of your immune system to function well. It can decrease your cholesterol and your blood pressure. Psychologically, it can really help to build self-confidence and improve relationships, increase your creativity. And it just really helps us be in the present, which makes us have better connections within our lives, better relationships. We're more conscious of what we're saying, how we're expressing ourselves. And it can also provide just so much increased sense of like peace and well-being and happiness. I love the Insight Timer app. That's the one that I have used for years and years and years. You can, I have the free version, but at different times in my life, I've paid for different versions of it as well. But it has an amazing resource in which meditation teachers from all over the world have put their content onto that app. So I think it's an awesome resource to use, but if you don't like something, just move on to a different teacher or move on to a different track. You've got lots of options. There's a search bar so you can look for different topics or things that you want to work with. So I think that is an awesome resource to use. The next practice of mindfulness that we're going to talk about is using your breath. So there's many different breath practices. And so I'm going to give you two different ones that I think that are really powerful. I've used, again, different ones all the time. So the 4-7-8 practice, hold on, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. The 4-7-8 practice, you breathe in for 4, you hold that for the count of 7, and then you exhale for the count of 8. And if you can, if you want to make a sighing sound when you breathe out, that is one cycle. And then you would do that 3, 4, 5 times, or as long as you could. And so that's one way that breath will actually really activate parasympathetic nervous system, keep us in a more relaxed state. I have a breath practice that I use every day after lunch, which kind of resets me, whether I'm going into the office, whether I'm going into the next part of my day, but it makes a big difference. And that is one way to do it. But again, activates the parasympathetic nervous system and keeps us more in the present moment. There's also box breathing. I use box breathing all the time when I'm adjusting. I'm adjusting clients, when I'm doing office work, because it's so easy. I can almost have it going on like a background track in my brain of, even if I'm doing computer work, of I'm breathing in for the count of 4, I'm holding that for the count of 4. I'm exhaling for the count of 4 and holding that for the count of 4. But I might repeat that cycle maybe 10 times. And I can feel the relaxation response setting in. But again, remember, the more you practice these things, the easier it is going to be to incite the relaxation practice or relaxation response. So another very healthy way to get your brain into the present moment. Nature is another strategy. So what is interesting about this, if they've done so many studies that Americans are extremely aware at this time of their lack of time in nature. So we become aware of exercise, we become aware of maybe some mindfulness or breath practices, but we're now really becoming aware that, gosh, nature is important and maybe I'm not getting enough of it. And so I encourage you to use the practice of being in nature. as a mindfulness practice, meaning you're using the five senses. What do you smell? What do you see? Are you spending time looking at the leaves, looking at the pine needles, how the wind is blowing through the trees? What are the sounds that you hear? Can you touch things? Touch a leaf, touch a pine needle, things that bring you into the present moment of what you see, what you hear, what you feel. But if you can connect with nature a few times a week, it can make a massive difference in your quality of life. So I always have it on my to-do list. I love going on hikes, but it doesn't always happen for our family with other things that are scheduled. So even just taking a walk outside for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever I have, can make a really big difference into how I show up for the rest of my day. Another practice is gratitude. So using some kind of a gratitude journal, maybe you start your day out that way, maybe you end your day with this, but each night writing 5 things that you're thankful for. They could be the simplest thing, and actually the simpler things have been found to be more effective. So not like, maybe you are thankful that maybe you got a raise at work, or, something positive happened that was big and you could write about that. But what they found is that being appreciative of the things that are really simple, like I had a great conversation with my spouse, or I really enjoyed the way dinner tasted, or I was able to take a 10-minute walk over my lunch break and breathe the fresh air. The simple things are what has been found to create more of a sense of joy. And what the researcher Brene Brown found was that gratitude and joy are completely interconnected. So the more connection you have to what you feel grateful for, the more joy you will feel in your life. And we're looking for that sense of joy as the underlying state, the state of being, versus just like this, I was happy for like 10 minutes because something good happened. Joy is different than that. It's a whole process, or again, just a state of being, a way of looking at the world. But again, joy and gratitude are so connected. So if you want more joy within your life, create more gratitude, but start noticing what you have to be grateful for, because there's a lot, but it's just taking the time to really notice it. Again, having a mindfulness practice around gratitude. Journaling has been something that I implemented in my life that has made a big difference. I actually read the book, The Artist's Way, several years ago, and I started doing morning pages. So morning pages can be done, or any kind of journaling throughout your day, but I work to write 3 pages each day in a journal. And some people aren't going to spend that much time doing that. That's okay. But even doing some kind of journaling can make a big difference. But usually when I get to like page 1.5, and they talk about this in The Artist's Way, there's something, some revelation, something I'm noticing, something that's like an insight that really, it's like magic that can happen around that page 1.5. And so what has been so fascinating of watching this process is that it enhanced my creativity tremendously. When I'm journaling and I'm doing that kind of a practice, I notice that ideas come to me, insights come to me, things that have been pretty incredible. But it also just helps me to process what's happening within my life. So it's another strategy, take it or leave it. But I really encourage you to try it. It usually takes me about 20 minutes to write about 3 pages by hand, and it's totally free form. Sometimes I don't even know what I need to write about or what I need to process, but I'll start out writing, I don't know what to write. And eventually the stuff that is there starts to come onto the page. So definitely a practice that can make a big difference in terms of quality of life and just being able to get something away, get it out, and help your brain and your emotion process. And then there's creativity. And I think this is the last strategy that I talked about here, but creativity, I think I read again, The Artist's Way. I love the book. And it made such a difference. It actually encouraged me to go on artist dates, which were just go to a museum or go to a craft store and pick out things that you want to create, a project. But again, when I spend and even an hour a week doing something creative, whether for me, it's usually painting, but I have more ideas, I have more peacefulness. I've learned to start my day out that way instead of saying, well, I'll do the creative project when I get done with everything else. Instead, I'll do the creative project first, and the rest of my day will just kind of flow. It's incredible. But finding something creative, whether maybe it's scrapbooking, maybe it's painting, maybe it's, creating a woodworking project. I don't know. But whatever just speaks to you, I think it is such a powerful tool to really put you in a state where it's so easy to be so present with exactly what you're doing, but also create that inner state of joy. So if I have the troubleshooting section in here because sometimes, how do I say this? Mindfulness is really impacted by the physiological state within your body. And so when people have a lot of long-term stress built up in their system, it's affected their blood pressure. It's affected their heart rate. It's affected their rate of respiration. It's caused their muscles to be tighter and tenser. It's affected the quality of their thinking and their ability to create peace because stress really impacts, again, that frontal cortex of the brain where our higher thinking centers are. And so when we're running in this kind of a kind of a loop, it's very difficult to create a mindful state. Mindfulness is also really affected by the digestive system, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But when we're in high stress, our digestion really is not functioning the way that it should be. Our immune system is shut off. Our sleep is usually affected. All of these components really affect our ability to be mindful. And so when we look at this, there can be physical stresses, emotional stresses, biochemical stresses that can affect us. And it's really important to kind of look at where you're at. What are the different stressors that are affecting you? And I say that because you can get a baseline. I've journaled about this stuff before for myself. Like, what are the areas that are causing stress? What are things that I want to do about them to really target those areas to make a difference? One of the things that is really key is looking at the state of your digestive system, because the digestive tract is heavily populated by neurotransmitters. Most people that have anxiety or depression and they're struggling to implement these mindful strategies, they're often dealing with an inflammatory state or what can be called leaky gut. And so there's things that can help with that, but it's definitely something in the whole picture of health that should be looked at, because looking at increasing omega-3s, you can use digestive enzymes, probiotics, stabilizing blood sugar, making sure you're drinking plenty of water. All of those things make a massive difference in how your body is functioning and how the digestive tract is functioning, which makes a huge difference in your quality of thoughts. So here's supplements that I've used with clients. These are kind of common ones that I've used that have made a big impact in terms of patients' digestive system. Metagenics EPA DHA 720, the Thorne Biogest, or Thorne, actually they changed the name of that. It's Advanced Digestive Enzymes. Clarithrobiotic Complete. Those are just some of the things. It's something you definitely want to talk to Dr. Scott and myself about, because if we can get the gut functioning better, it can make a big difference in the level of peace and healing within your body. You want to look at your posture. So if this is you throughout the day, just know that this type of posture triggers fear physiology. It lowers testosterone and it raises cortisol. So it lowers a hormone that actually gives you energy and strength, and it lowers that hormone, and then it increases a stress hormone called cortisol, which also increases the amount of inflammation within the body. So even like if you look at this woman's posture in two different ways, where she is slumped over is decreasing her testosterone by 10%. But if she's sitting with an open chest and her shoulders back, it's increasing testosterone by 20%. If you think of like where she's at with cortisol in that hunched posture, that's increasing cortisol by 15%, but again, shoulders open, decreasing cortisol by 25%. So you can make big differences just in paying attention to your posture and your body position. And then it's important to realize that the brain is your thought processing center, but the spinal cord is your emotional processing center. So if your spine is really stuck or constricted, it will have an impact on the quality of the thoughts you think, the range of the emotions that you can feel. So if you have a really flexible spine that can move and respond to what's happening throughout your day, you automatically have a much larger range of emotion that you have access to, but you also have more access to emotions of peace and joy and sense of well-being. And that is on a structural level, but it's also on a biochemical level. And so the thing to realize about mindfulness is that we are gathering information constantly. Our subconscious is constantly taking in what's happening around us. And from birth to age 10, your brain is taking on information from the media, from teachers, what teachers say to you, what your parents say to you, what social media is telling you, what you're making up beliefs. Your brain is constantly trying to analyze things and make up beliefs and models about the world and how we fit into that. And the thing about that is that default mode is like the autopilot survival mode. And it puts us into high alert state for what could cause us harm. And it really is going to attach itself to things that are fearful, anything that it remembers that created fear, or anything that was like a limiting belief or a disempowering story of not feeling good or worthy enough. The brain will remember those things, and we can carry those things around us almost like armor. So we want to create more adaptability to actually become aware of what our brain is thinking about. So if you don't have a state of mindfulness, meaning your brain is constantly just reacting to whatever's happening around you, if you don't have that level of mindfulness, you may be making decisions that are from something that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, which we're going to call old programming. But the thing that happens with mindfulness is the more you become aware of what you're actually thinking about, you can reframe those thoughts and belief systems and make better choices in regards to that programming or what you're thinking about. But if you don't have mindfulness, you are literally like a soundtrack of all of these things that have happened throughout your life that, again, are probably not true, probably never were true, but your brain held on to them, but it's constantly repeating those things over and over again. We want to create new programming, but we need to be aware of what's happening in order to create that programming. Thoughts drive how you feel. So like if you're actively working on a gratitude process, you could like a gratitude journal. Are you able to feel that gratitude, or do you have focus on what you don't have? Just by implementing a gratitude process, you're shifting your thinking into gratitude. But again, you need to have some kind of a focus in order to do that, and awareness of what your brain is thinking. Your thoughts and beliefs are the filter with which you see that model of the world, and which you use to model the world and change how you feel. So then how you feel becomes either your medicine or your poison. When a feeling is created, there are biological and molecular changes that happen within your body. So Scott and I have talked about this for years, and I think patients think of like chiropractic and NSA often in terms of pain. What I think of it as terms of complete healing. And the reason that is there's research that's been done, and when you change someone's state, you actually improve what their DNA is basically expressing. So you can actually, when someone feels more sense of peace and well-being within their body, which is like one of my favorite reasons to why I get adjusted on a weekly basis, but when you experience that sense of peace, you're actually improving the state of the DNA within your body. You're actually expressing more health promoting genes and dampening the effect of health demoting genes. So there's so much happening within that process. So you want to think about, as you develop this mindfulness practice, which thoughts do you want to pay attention to, and which thoughts do you want to disregard or to get rid of, basically? What is the meaning that you're giving to things, and what's your perspective? You need to start to create some awareness about what that looks like. What is the story that you're telling yourself about the situations that you're in? And if we change that, you're changing the way you feel about your life, but you're also lowering inflammation and increasing your immune system. So how you think has a big role in terms of your physiology. When you use positive thoughts, you can change so many different aspects of not only your physiology, but also your mental and emotional well-being. So the thing that I will just describe very quickly is that when you think of how you responded to trauma as a kid, or different things that were happening to you, your spine would go into a specific state, which we would call like almost like a state of distortion. as it compensated as a way to basically deal with what was happening, what the overload of stress was happening within the body. That pattern then, when the brain finds something that it works to deal with the trauma or the tough situations, and it's using that spinal tension pattern to cope with that stress, and it uses it repeatedly, the brain is learning a new way of being, and that will neurologically and physically and structurally shape what is happening within your body. So if you come into our office and we do scans and if we do take x-rays, what we're seeing on that x-ray is how your body coped with stress time and time again. And that's also what we see when you get on the chiropractic table. What we're looking for then is what we call a dominant phase, meaning that dominant pattern in terms of how you handled stress over and over and over again, what your body learned, and how can we access that to teach the nervous system to do something differently, to release that tension pattern and move into something healthier. So what the thing to think about is if you're struggling to let go of a negative pattern or what you perceive to be negative or unhealthy, change how the nervous system perceives and interprets information, which I'm going to give you here in a second. But when we do the adjustments, we're actually releasing that spinal cord tension and allowing the spine to shift on both a structural and a biochemical level. That's called reorganizational healing. We do classes on that. So look for that because that will come up later in the year. So we want to decrease the fight or flight physiology, but we also want to change the structure and the function of what the brain and the spine are communicating. And so the key with that is when we look at that is that when you start to release that spinal cord tension, the research shows people have increased feelings of happiness and joy. They have an improved mental and emotional state. They have less physical pain. They have an increased sense of well-being. They have a higher ability to adapt to the stress within their lives, which is an improved resiliency. And so patients that are more likely also to have that increased frontal cortex activity that NSA adjustments produce, that mindfulness practices produce, they think better and they can make higher level decisions. So they can actually engage in the important things within their life at a higher level because they can make better decisions and they're not in that stressed physiology state. So when you improve your emotional state, you're actually improving inflammatory markers, you're improving how your DNA is functioning, but you're also really start to think you change the ability of the thoughts that you're thinking and the emotions that you're then feeling. And when you combine that with other lifestyle factors, like exercise is a huge part of my mindfulness practice because it shifts, again, my thinking and my state of being. When I drink water, when I eat whole foods, when I make time for adequate sleep, for good sleep, all of those things make a difference. And we call that wellness stacking. You add one good thing and the next good thing happens. When I drink enough water, I have more mental focus. When I have more mental focus, my mindfulness practice goes better. When my practice goes better, I sleep better. When I exercise, all of those things are influenced, but we call that whole process wellness stacking. So I just want to give you this brief kind of summary because every time we do an adjustment, I'm looking for these patterns within your body. And because, again, most clients are thinking of NSA chiropractic in terms of pain, I want to give you the other side of this because pain and physical structural kinds of things, it's all connected with your emotions, your quality of thought, what you think about, all of it. And so when I find different patterns within your nervous system, I'm analyzing how your spine is moving, where it's stuck, where it's not stuck. I might have you turn your head from side to side. I'm feeling the quality of the spine and where things are getting stuck in the system, if that makes sense. But if we have a lot of tension at C1, the emotional, mindful pattern of that someone is stuck in is the constant feeling of overwhelm. How are things going to get done? How is everything going to work out? There's almost a level of fear that's associated with that. And so the key with a C1 pattern, again, all of these patterns is that they can change. And as you decrease the tension in those patterns, you're increasing the adaptability and resiliency of someone's life. And so we go into like C5, right in the lower part of the neck. If there's a lot of tension at C5, again, there's a lot of fear within someone's life, but it's expressed as rage and anger. If there's a lot of C2 tension, thought, there's constant thought, there's constant thinking, and it becomes difficult to actually feel any type of emotion. Maybe you can get some anger to go through there, but it's difficult to feel because there's so much thinking going on. It's actually kind of a way of disconnecting thinking from emotion. When there's a lot of sacral issues, so issues in the lower part of the spine, there's a constant questioning, a constant self-doubt that is ruling someone's mind and their thinking patterns, but looking at self-worth, are their career, are they in the right career? Are they doing the right job parenting? Are they doing the right job with school? Whatever it may be, but there this constant questioning of how things are going within their life. C5 coccyx is another very common pattern, which there's actually a lot of fear, but it's expressed as feeling like a victim, like things are out of their control. They can't really make things happen for them. Just things keep happening to them that they're not able to make an impact with. And then there's a C2 sacrum pattern, which looks like a curvature in the spine. And that is like, it will appear as a scoliosis, but it's the emotional resonance of feeling resigned to what is happening within life. Like, it's just the way it is. It's not going to change. This is just how things are going to be. And in that, there's a lack of possibility. And when you have a lack of possibility, you can't really see solutions or how things could shift or change within someone's life. So realize that when you start to clear that tension from someone's system, an anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. So as you go through that healing process, you're going to start to be able to have time and space for adaptability. Adaptability and resiliency are so key, because when you create that, when you start to clear the C1 tension and that fear level drops out and the overwhelm drops out, we can start to make higher level decisions. You have the ability to choose your response. So what we mean by that is when you start to create a mindfulness practice, especially when you use it in relationship to NSA, you start to have more space in between your thoughts that gives you the awareness of what you're thinking about, what your emotional state is, and also choosing from a higher level of consciousness. So what that means is, like, you may say, okay, I need to choose a different thought process. I need to take a 10-minute breathing break or 5-minute breathing break. I need to get outside and take a walk. But when you start to have that kind of response time within your behavior, you can create more of the life. It's going to bring you closer to what you're trying to create within your world. So that can be a breathwork practice, a mindfulness practice. It can be journaling. It can be nature, whatever it is. But we want to try to decrease the fight or flight physiology so you have that increased space for how you want to live your life. So as you start to become more conscious, you have the ability to make different choices, and people in our lives will feel a new vibration. And so in effect, that when you have that mindfulness practice and increased resiliency, it allows you to become a better version of yourself and the people around you. So I love this Viktor Frankl quote: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is the power to choose a response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom." So those are all kinds of topics that we talked about, really looking at what kind of strategies can you implement on a daily basis, how the chiropractic piece of things really ties into the nervous system adaptability and flexibility, but also being able to create more awareness of the patterns that you maybe become stuck with, and how you can basically unleash that kind of healing power so that you do have the awareness and the adaptability to choose a higher level response. So our mission is to inspire clients to awaken to their highest potential by improving physical, emotional, and mental well-being, and allowing our community to express vibrant health. Just some things that are coming up. So we have an SRI workshop that's coming up, which is specifically on stage 2 of the healing process, which is all about polarity. So Jay's going to talk a lot about that. Polarity is getting stuck in what's right or wrong, good or bad, what's going to save me, but then it doesn't work, so I go back to a lower energy level. All kinds of concepts that are important in the healing process, but that'll be an in-person class that's happening on Monday, June 3rd at 6:15. And if there's anyone that you know that needs our help, please let them know that if they call into our office and mention that they were in this class or referred by you, that they will receive their exam for a $49 intake instead of $189. So thank you so much for being here tonight. I just want to open up any questions. If anybody has any questions or comments or things that they want to add, I would love that. But I am waiting to see if there's anybody that has anything to add. Okay, well, I don't see a lot of activity there, so I'm just gonna say thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope it was a helpful class. Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm so glad you're here. But if there's anything that comes up and you have questions as the week goes on, or ask Dr. Scott and I and myself any questions, we would love that. But I hope that there's a lot of actionable tools that you can take, and maybe they're small steps, maybe they're big steps for you, but we want to make sure that you have a lot of great information and tools. And thank you, Lisa and John. I appreciate it. But I so appreciate you showing up tonight, and I hope I get to see you soon, and have a great night. Thank you.